Hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening, sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts. 719-247-1313. You can call or text that number, or you could find me probably the best social media platform in terms of interaction would probably be X at Gingerly Tweets. There has been a lot of talk from yours truly and others about what is right or what is wrong with the Denver Nuggets, what they are or what they aren't. But we mustn't overcomplicate things. We can overcomplicate sports. I think when it comes to the Denver Nuggets, none of that other stuff that you may think of matters as much as the partnership between Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. In the game that they absolutely had to have on Friday, had to beat Memphis, there were some good things. I thought Aaron Gordon played great. There were some bad things, like the Nuggets couldn't make a three-pointer to save their life. And there were things that were bad at times during the game that got a little bit better, like their perimeter defense. But you mix all of those things together, and the Nuggets were in trouble. You take the good, the bad. They were at risk of losing that game. And losing that game could put them in the play-in. What changed? What made the difference? What pushed the Denver Nuggets over the finish line? Jamal Murray showed up in the fourth quarter. He didn't look great. He didn't look great for 3 quarters. Made 2 shots, I think, in the first 3 quarters of the game. Hit arguably the 3 biggest shots of the game in the fourth quarter. 2 combined in quarters 1, 2, and 3. Fourth quarter, he hits 3. They all happen to be the biggest shots of the game, and the Nuggets win. All this stuff about, the attitude of this team, the shock to the system of firing Michael Malone, their defense, the bench, the three-point shooting, all that will matter more as the playoffs go along. Right? The further you go in the playoffs, the more complete teams you are going to be facing, and the more you have to be yourself as close to a complete team as you can be. But it starts with Murray and Jokic. If that's right, they've got a shot against literally everyone. Not saying I would take the Nuggets over everyone, but they got a shot against everyone in the NBA. Both sides of the bracket, if those two are right. And we can always expect, most always expect Nikola Jokic to be right. It's really the other guy who we have to constantly ask that question about. But if they're right, they got a shot. If Jamal Murray's not right, if he's the Jamal Murray of the first 3 quarters of the Memphis Grizzlies game, this isn't going to be a long postseason for the Denver Nuggets. And I think it's really starts with that. You boil it down to that. That's the bottom line here. You ask me how this team is going to go against the Clippers, do against the Clippers. Let me ask you a question in response to your question. How's Jamal Murray feeling? My feeling about this series, and it will be about the next one after that. If they get by the Clippers, it will be about the next one after that. If they get by probably OKC, I'll keep asking it. And I'll keep asking it from game to game. Because that's what we've been trained to do with Jamal Murray. But everything that this team can or can't do stems from that. That two-man game can match any team in the NBA bucket for bucket. Preferably, they would hit threes, but they can answer any bucket on the other end going to that two-man game between Murray and Jokic. And that's what they did late in that Memphis game. When Murray is on the floor with the rest of the starters, they're a better defensive team. Not a great defensive team, but they're better. And look at the difference in Russell Westbrook. I would argue that the Russell Westbrook you saw in the last 3 games of the season is exactly the same Russell Westbrook you saw against Minnesota and San Antonio. What is the difference? He was put in his proper place, put in his proper role by Jamal Murray being healthy. The problem with Russell Westbrook, the agent of chaos that he tends to be, is that if you don't confine that chaos into a very specific role, it can wreak havoc, as you saw against Minnesota and San Antonio. All of a sudden, a lot of people chirping back at the Westbrook haters after the last couple of games. I think it's turnabout is fair play, but also what's the difference? Jamal Murray played, and Russell Westbrook was coming off the bench and playing fewer minutes and being relied on less as the game got late. Everything everything that works with the Denver Nuggets, when they're at their best, whatever their best this season is, inevitably it's because Jamal Murray is right. Even going back in the past, last year's playoffs, round 1, I would say Jamal Murray wasn't necessarily right that whole series, but guess what? He was right when he needed to be. The Lakers led 95% of the minutes in that series, yet they ended up losing the series. Why? Because playoff Jamal showed up in the last few minutes of every one of those games. Game 7 against Minnesota, both he and Nikola Jokic gassed out. And you had an epic collapse by the Denver Nuggets. Looking at this matchup with the Clippers, and there are more layers to this. But what do you look at immediately when you see this matchup? Jokic, Murray versus Kawhi, Harden. That's what it is. And what better way to illustrate my point than saying if Jokic and Murray are right, which duo are you going to take in the postseason? Yeah, you're going to take Jokic and Murray over Harden and Kawhi. But if Murray's not right, then is he any better to the Denver Nuggets as playoff James Harden is to the Clippers? I wouldn't say so. The most positive development from this team over the last few games is not really anything that David Adelman is doing. It's the fact that Jamal Murray's been playing and been effective when he's needed to be. Now, I still have questions, right? Because he still doesn't overall look right. But he was right when he needed to be early in the Houston game for them to take control of that, and he was good late against Memphis. They're going to need more, I think, than that from Jamal Murray. But that's what it starts with, and I think that becomes the biggest question as we get closer to this series beginning on Saturday. How's Jamal doing? Is he responding well? I think it's one of the best things about the Nuggets not being in the play-in is that they get to rest all week. And that'll be good for Jamal Murray. I would expect him to be about as good as he's going to be at any point in the playoffs for game 1 on Saturday, which is an important game for the Denver Nuggets to get. But he's going to be story number one, even above the coaching change. So we'll throw a lot of other stuff into it, like we got all week. In fact, later in the show, I'll talk about the Clippers and dive more in depth. And I'm not saying those things don't matter at all. They just matter less. It starts with Jamal Murray and what he can do with Nikola Jokic. Now, I will say, as it pertains to David Adelman, I legitimately have been impressed with him. And it's not, there's some X's and O's things that you can kind of look at that maybe David Adelman's doing that you didn't see a lot of with Michael Malone. But what I'm impressed about is just how he's handled this whole situation. It's not an easy spot to be thrown into. And it was made more difficult given the pressure on this team, how late he took over the job. And I think he's done a great job. He's been really good post-game, at being just a little combative when he was asked about the, who's going to close games with. He was he pushed a little bit. There was a little edge to him when he's like, people write things out there, write whatever articles you want. I'm going to play the 5 best players. And that in and of itself, I think, is a change. Because I didn't always believe that the players that were relied on the most and in the most crucial times this season were being chosen strictly because it's a meritocracy. I don't know if that was always the case. And I think it's part of the reason why Michael Malone's no longer the head coach. David Adelman's like, hey, you earn it throughout the game. So we see Pickett close the game against Sacramento, not Russell Westbrook. And you get the Memphis game, and it's Westbrook in for Michael Porter. So that meritocracy that, hey, it's a clean slate. You earn it through 40 some odd minutes, and you're going to play in the 47th and 48th minute. And he's not trying to put his stamp on the team. I think that's what I take away more than anything. Like, the guys wanted to be a head coach. He was born to be a head coach, right? His father, Rick, is one of the most well-respected coaches in NBA history. He's wanted to do this job, and here's his opportunity. It's hard to fight the urge to reinvent the wheel, to do something on a game-to-game basis where you could say, well, that's David Adelman. And he's done a few things, but it doesn't feel overwhelming. It doesn't feel like David Adelman is imposing himself on the team. If anything, I think he's taken a step back. Let the players kind of lead the way. Let the players control a lot of what goes on, especially communication on the court. And some Christian Brown talked about after the Sacramento game. And I actually think that this is David Adelman's best path to win this job, is to allow the roster, the players, to kind of, in a way, speak for themselves, right? Instead of trying, I think part of the issue with Michael Malone was that he was very intently coaching these guys. And they perhaps wanted a little bit more of a hands-off approach. So I actually think it helps David Adelman's case. that it seems like the players are having a little bit more fun out there. They're a little bit looser. And he's not trying to say, all right, I'm here, new sheriff in town. This is the way we're going to do things. Maybe behind the scenes, he's doing some of that stuff. I don't see a lot of it. It feels different than when Michael Malone was the head coach. And that's, and I don't want to make it out to be, well, Michael Malone was never good for the Denver Nuggets. That's not what I'm saying. My argument was that Michael Malone's coaching style is better suited for a team that hasn't accomplished anything. And once the Denver Nuggets accomplish the thing, it would have probably been in his best interest to back off a bit, to give his players a little bit more latitude, given that they now know what it takes. He doesn't have to be on them. Now, David Adelman's taking over at a completely different time in the Nuggets franchise history, and I think he's going about it the right way. Now, there will be a time, and it may be as early as the Clippers series, it may be later on, where we're going to have to see if David Adelman can coach up this team. There are going to be decisions, rotations, things like that will occur during these playoffs where we're going to find out David Adelman's philosophy on things and whether it works. But I just think these last 3 games, and I guess some credit goes to Josh Kroenke here for having the pulse of the team. They've responded. They've responded to David Adelman. But now the real work begins. These last 3 games have been fun. But now this is the important time of the season. And is David Adelman up to that task? We'll find out starting on Saturday. 719-247-1313. Your thoughts on the Clippers matchup, about my assertion that nothing with this basketball team is more important than that Jokic-Murray connection, and your early takeaways from the David Adelman era. Josh Kroenke did speak today, answered many questions about the decision and where the Nuggets go moving forward. I'll play some of that audio for you coming up later. But next, want to get to the other significant development of the weekend that occurred in Loveland. Very funny comedian Dusty Slay is bringing the Night Shift tour to the Pikes Peak Center here in Colorado Springs, Saturday, May 3rd. Tickets available online at axs.com or in person at the Pikes Peak Center box office. There is also a third way to get your tickets, and it's happening all week. I don't know if you saw the news on our social media platforms, but I am giving away tickets all week to see Dusty Slay at, I almost call him Dusty May, the Michigan coach. March Madness, not far enough behind me, apparently. Dusty Slay at the Pikes Peak Center. That's coming up a little bit later on. Now, you want to know, sometimes we get in our bubbles, right? And I think that's something that is certainly happening throughout all corners of society, right? We like to get in our own bubble where people talk about the things we like to talk about, and we're kind of shut off from everybody else. And if you want to know just how big Gabriel Landeskog's potential return is, how big of a deal this is, and if it's something that goes beyond the bubble that you and I live in, with the Avalanche just being right up the road, how about this? For Friday's game, where Landeskog played his first professional hockey game, well, as far as I know, first hockey game of any kind. I don't know if he was slumming it in the beer leagues in Aurora while he was recovering. This was his first hockey game of any sort. But Flow Hockey, who streamed the game, and good on them for not putting it behind a paywall, like giving everybody the opportunity to see this that want to see this. They reported for Friday's game that they had more than 120,000 people watching that. For some, no disrespect, but some niche website that broadcasts AHL games is getting 120K at least watching. And I'm sure not every one of them was an Avalanche fan. This is of general interest. This is a big deal. And it's a huge deal locally, which is why people are paying $600 a pop to be in the building on Friday. But those viewership numbers tell me that this goes beyond. And I think really post-Ovi, we found this little window here before the Stanley Cup playoffs begin, which is this weekend, and Ovi's chase for Gretzky. Once he got that done and we reacted to it for a few days, it created this like small window where a lot of playoff business was already attended to. There's not a ton left to figure out this hockey season. The Gabriel Landeskog story, I think, took center stage in that window. It became the biggest story in hockey. I think it was the biggest story in hockey this weekend. And whether you stream the game or you went to Loveland to watch it, I don't know how you could be disappointed. I mean, I watched the game. Guy skated, looked good, mixed it up a few times, put a dude in a headlock. I mean, it was almost the full Gabriel Landeskog experience. The Eagles almost all have jerseys that look like the Avs. Like if you had to really, squint a little bit, but it looked like Gabriel Landeskog in an Avalanche sweater. I thought it was, certainly no one was expecting him to like break down. So, but I think it went about as well as it could. Here's Gabriel Landeskog, his assessment.
Yeah, no, it felt great. Obviously some nerves going into it. And I said out there in the interview on the ice that on ice warm up, I was trying to figure out what did I used to do again? What was my routine? But but I was just trying to enjoy it too, right? Like get out there and enjoy it, get into the game. And yeah, physically I feel great. There's obviously it's the first game in a long time, so I got plenty of things to work on and get better at, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So how could the biggest and best story in hockey right now get any better? Well, it did just one night later.
Left wing half wall to the blue line for Rosen. Back for Tynan. Upstairs. Rosen, one-timer. Scores! Gabe Landeskog! And there's your punctuation on a comeback weekend for the captain.
AHL.TV with the call there. Gabriel Landeskog did about everything that you would want to see Gabriel Landeskog do. Took him 2 nights, which is understandable given how long he's been off the ice in a competitive situation. But you got the physical play of Gabriel Landeskog. You got the skating ability. You got a goal. You got some passing. I mean, I don't know what other box he needed to check. But and we know it's a completely different level once he steps back out on an NHL sheet of ice, and he just so happens to be doing it at some point during the playoffs. But we're just going along. The next thing in his return, what are your expectations? Don't get hurt. Look like Gabriel Landeskog. And against understanding the competition he was going against, he looked like that. And the thing about it is the only way we're going to know if Gabriel Landeskog is back even close to what he was in 2022 is by having him on the ice in an NHL game against NHL players. There's so much unknown with this, and we're just going step by step and saying, okay, how does he look here? All right, past that checkpoint, how does he look here? I don't know what else we could have seen from Gabriel Landeskog this weekend to say he's ready to return. I mean, it was a rehab start. That's what happened. After you do the rehab start, you go back to the big club. We'll hear from Jared Bednar this week. Obviously, as we get closer to Saturday or Sunday, whenever the Avs step on the ice against the Dallas Stars, and he'll talk about it. It'll be the biggest thing going into this series. And we'll see what else he needs to do. But I don't know, from my untrained eye, as far as post-surgical hockey players go, look pretty good to me. Take your thoughts on it. I will say this just in closing before we move on, and we'll talk about the Avs and what they were doing while Gabe was in Loveland coming up in a little bit. But last thing I'll say, I am somebody that has been accused on more than one occasion of just not liking, just kind of being a grump, right? I do tend to find things to hate, not hate, but sports hate, right? Nothing about, there's nothing to hate on with the Gabriel Landeskog thing. That was just awesome. And everybody, and what's really cool about this, there's not, even Stars fans are probably like, this would be really cool for him to play. Right? Who's rooting against the return of Gabriel Landeskog? And to see all of his teammates there in Loveland, the McCarrs and the McKinnons, and what it meant to them was just a really cool thing to see. And I'll say this, I don't know what game it's going to be. And there's still a little bit of, will it be any game? But I feel very confident in this. Whatever game Gabriel Landeskog steps back out on the ice with the Colorado Avalanche in the playoffs, they're winning that game. Whether that's game 1 in Dallas, game 3 in Denver, game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. Whatever game Gabriel Landeskog steps back out on the ice for the first time, the Avalanche are winning that game because those guys on the ice, just watching them and them react to Gabriel Landeskog back out on the ice. As long as Jared Bednar doesn't put too much on Gabriel Landeskog's shoulders, and I don't think there's any reason to think he would, Gabriel Landeskog's return is only going to be good for the Avs. The pop that they're going to get, those dudes are going to run through a wall when Gabriel Landeskog is back out on the ice. Whatever game it might be. Take your thoughts on Landy's return. We'll put it in quotes. We know what the real return is, but this weekend was cool. 719-247-1313. We will get into the Stars Avs matchup coming up in a little bit and why the biggest question mark of this series is not on the Avs side of the ledger. It's on Dallas's. But in the meantime, speaking of things that I don't know how you can find a way to hate, let's talk about the Masters yesterday. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC back at Widener Field this Saturday, hosting El Paso Locomotive. The big occasion outside of the soccer match itself is that they'll be revealing their new jersey for the 2025 season. So come on out and join us. Gates open at 5. Get your tickets now. SwitchbacksFC.com. Man, that Sunday at Augusta, how great was that? And one thing that I don't like, I always feel like when you bring up the is it good for the sport conversation, that it's always, I think it's diminishing the sport, right? If you have to be cognizant of, hey, what helps this sport along? What thing can help boost it? I don't really want to have necessarily that conversation. Golf is a niche sport. It probably will never be, the insane popularity that maybe it was in terms of watching it, or its place in the sports landscape is when Tiger was dominating. But I don't really want to, that's not the conversation that I want to have, other than to say we can agree that the only, and maybe I'm just speaking as a fan, not speaking in terms of looking out for the greater good of golf. Can we all agree that no matter what side of the Rory story you were on Sunday, that really the only bad outcome would be if Justin Rose were to win it? And I'm talking about going into the day. Right? Because, I should say going into the playoff. That's what I mean by that. The only bad outcome once it got to the playoff was Justin Rose can't win now. No. I know Rory missed the putt that would have won it, and we've seen that before, right? From him, and we've seen it in other sports. You don't finish the job, and it comes back to haunt you. But I wanted to see Rory do it. But I think Bryson winning with his whatever the opposite of a heel turn is. Wrestling fans, help me out here. I know about the heel turns. I know what John Cena just did. Like, what's the opposite of that? Is that a face turn? Like the change in Bryson DeChambeau where he's become like this man of the people. It would have been neat to see him win. I don't know that maybe deep within the golf community, there's still a PGA versus live thing, but I would have been okay with Bryson winning. I thought Lucas Oberg was going to win it going into the weekend, or going into the tournament, I should say. That was kind of my pick. To have golf's next star, perhaps, emerging. And then, of course, Scotty Scheffler, like, just being a machine. Like, there were a lot of different possibilities that I think ultimately would be fun. Except Justin Rose beating Rory in the playoff. With all due respect to Justin Rose, and it was a hell of a round for Justin Rose when Bryson was collapsing, when Rory was teetering on the edge back and forth all afternoon long. Like, credit to Justin Rose, who just kept plugging away and doing what he needed to do to put him in a position. This is not an anti-Justin Rose, but it's with everything the weekend and Sunday was shaping up to be. For all that to happen, to just have Justin Rose win the playoff, I think would have been the only unacceptable result. Once Rory got to the playoff, even though it was his fault that there was a playoff. It's like, he's got to win. He's got to win. And I thought that going from 18 to 18, essentially, 18 to the first playoff hole for Rory McIlroy, I thought was the perfect encapsulation of the roller coaster ride we saw on Sunday. I mean, Rory McIlroy was, you could just tell, was fighting his own demons. Like early on, you know, he has that terrible tee shot to start the day, and you're like, oh boy. But then Bryson quickly faded, and it became more about Rory versus himself. That's what I found so fascinating watching throughout the day yesterday. Was it was literally Bryson faded into the background, and Rory had probably only limited knowledge about what Lucas Oberg was doing or Justin Rose was doing. It was very much talk about the three different kind of conflicts, right? Man versus nature, man versus man, and man versus himself. That was man versus himself. That was every demon that Rory McIlroy has trying to bring him down over the course of that round. And every time that popped up and you went, here we go. Whether it's hole 1, hole 9, 10, you know, whatever points it was, you're like, here we go. And then Rory said, demons be gone. And he answered. It was him out on that course that had just, it was a dragon that he had yet to slay. And by the way, that graphic CBS kept putting up did him no favors. The Grand Slam thing. Like, it took this dude 1 try and took this dude 2 tries, and Rory's at 11. That didn't help. I know he didn't see the graphic, but just as the backdrop of all of this. But I thought all of Rory's demons, all of his failures on that course over the years were coming back periodically through his Sunday round. And to watch him wrestle with those and ultimately conquer them, even as recently as missing the putt on 18 and going to the playoff. I mean, he played that first playoff hole flawlessly. You wouldn't even know if you had just turned it on when Justin Rose and Rory McIlroy were stepping up to the tee box. You wouldn't have even known that Rory had botched what was an incredibly makeable putt on 18. It should have been over there. But the way he played and just his demeanor and everything, you wouldn't even know it. And I can't quite say that winning it on your 11th try is more impressive than winning it on your first try in terms of completing the career Grand Slam. But part of me is like, you know, you go through it that much. And I heard, I think it was Brandel Chambly on Dan Patrick's show last week likening Rory McIlroy to the Buffalo Bills. Like, we just went through this with the whole Allen Mahomes dynamic. Replace Josh Allen with Rory McIlroy and make Mahomes Augusta National. Like, no matter what you do, you can't seem to get past it. And there are points and there are other sports comparisons that you can make, but there have been times, I mean, the question about whether Rory could win it going into Thursday, there wasn't a lot of it. There really wasn't, given that he was still on the cusp of winning the Grand Slam. I think with some people, it had set in that Rory's maybe never going to do this. So why just keep bringing it up over and over again? And then wouldn't you know it, he finally breaks through. And there's the line from Moneyball about how can you not be romantic about baseball? When you saw that putt on 18 go in, or on the first playoff hole go in, and him drop to his knees and was like physically shaking, and just that whole sequence from that point to him walking, up and being congratulated, his wife and his daughter, who could not care less. Poppy, what are you doing here? Like, your dad completed his quest. His daughter could not care less. But just like all of that, like how can you not get a little misty about it? A little, like, you felt, I mean, I'm not wrong, right? You felt it too. Like, it was just this little, like, tug of the heartstring, and you're like, man, how awesome is this? Whether you were rooting for him or not. Just to see that. And maybe it's the type of feeling that you're only going to feel with a guy who has beat his head against the wall for 11 years trying to win that green jacket. Maybe all we saw yesterday, and I don't know if Rory talked about this afterwards. I can't imagine he's like, no, it was all worth it, wouldn't change a thing. I'm sure he would rather have won the Masters about 10 years ago. But I don't know, all the feelings that were around that yesterday, it's like maybe 11 was the number. Right? To feel that way about someone completing the Grand Slam. Maybe it wouldn't feel the same way if it was Rory's 5th try or his 3rd. But that was that Sunday was what was great, good for golf. That was great. That whole day was awesome. And even you go back to the way that Saturday ended with Bryson putting himself squarely in the mix. That was as fun and also stressful of a round of golf that I have watched in a very long time. I can't even imagine what it was like to be competing in the midst of that, but that's awesome. And we need to have a conversation about Rory. He's done it now. Got the green jacket, no longer a choke artist. Best golfer of the last 50 years, not named Tiger Woods. I mean, that's what he did yesterday said. It's him and Tiger, last 50 years. Is that where Rory is? Take your thoughts on the Masters, 719-247-1313. Coming up after the top of the hour, Josh Kroenke doing what, to be fair here, he should have done immediately when he made the decision to fire Michael Malone, and that speak about it and answer questions about it. He finally did that today. I'll bring you some of the highlights next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Monday. Ryan Kaufman with you. Reminder, you can watch the show live on a daily basis through our social media platforms, whether it be X, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. The handle is all the same, at XTRA Sports 1300. Covered a lot of ground in hour number 1. And we'll revisit some of those topics as we go on, including Gabriel Landeskog's return, the Denver Nuggets going into the postseason, and the Masters with Rory McIlroy. But I guess a little bit of Nuggets here off the top to begin hour number 2. You know, I think Josh Kroenke you've seen a lot of reports coming out about why Josh Kroenke did what he did to fire Michael Malone. And I think that's because Josh Kroenke himself created a vacuum. When you don't have your traditional presser where you can be asked questions by non-team media about why you did this, and you decide to just do a recorded sit down with team media, that's going to be overall unsatisfying to a lot of people. Right? It feels very staged, very choreographed, very scripted. And then what happens when you create this void without answering some of these questions yourself? Other people fill that vacuum for you. And we have seen a ton of stuff about this. Some seem a little far-fetched, like the idea that the Nuggets don't want to trade Michael Porter because he went to Missouri. But this is, you know, in some way, Josh Kroenke did this to himself. So I don't know if today was always in the plans or because of what had been happening in people trying to fill in the blanks on why they did this. Josh Kroenke met with the media today. And he started with the notion, and I give him credit that some of the reporting out there, instead of just dismissing it all, he did acknowledge some things that have been reported, like the fact that he was thinking about firing Michael Malone at the All-Star break. Here's Josh Kroenke on the multiple times that he thought about making the move and ultimately chose not to.
There were 2 moments in time that I identified where I hesitated, and it was either out of personal feelings or belief for the group. One was last fall. I couldn't tell you an exact date. It was around Thanksgiving at some point when I was really feeling like things were not headed in a direction or up to my standards as an organization. And I saw it was reported that I would sit in with meetings with Calvin and Coach at times, which I did. And we had great conversation in those meetings, but I need more when I'm not around. My role is not to necessarily be there on a daily basis. I need people that are policing the culture and pushing it forward for me on a daily basis. And then, I think that we went on a little run before the All-Star break. That's been reported. I saw out there that I was contemplating something around then. That is true. But when you have a roster like we do, you have the best player on the planet. It can mask a lot of things. And so, what would be crazier, me doing what I did last week or doing it on an 8-game win streak?
Equal? No, I think he's right. I think it would be viewed as crazier if he fired Michael Malone after an 8-game winning streak. And I think that's the biggest problem with all of this, is there was never really a great time. You fire him after Game 7? Well, how many teams are able to repeat? And going back to what he said about the personal relationships thing, that's problematic. right? And I've been saying it about evaluating the Denver Nuggets moving forward. He's got to remove that. And perhaps by getting somebody at the top of the organization and general manager that does not have those ties will give the Denver Nuggets really a once over and truly be critical and truly point out, like, this isn't right. You can't have your second best player in Jamal Murray, his availability being a question mark from week to week. And then his effectiveness when he's out on the floor. Can't have that being a question mark. You know, this idea that you want to draft all of these young guys and replenish what you lose, that's not the right way to go. Whatever that answer is, I just think that the Nuggets are right to want those fresh set of eyes and somebody that doesn't have all the feels for what Jamal Murray meant to this team or what Michael Porter has meant, the trials and tribulations that he has gone through. They need someone that is cold and calculated and says, you know, this guy's got to go. This guy's good. We got, you know, look at all of that. And I think that's Josh Kroenke admitting that his personal affinity towards some people like Booth and Malone have maybe clouded his judgment a little bit. I think the thing that stuck out to me and why I played that clip, not only to hear Josh Kroenke admit that, yeah, they was thinking about doing it around the All-Star break, was the idea that I'm not around all the time. You need to be adults. He didn't put it that way, but that's what he's referring to. He trusted Calvin Booth and Michael Malone to continue what the Nuggets were, the culture. And I think it goes back to why nobody could win this, why he couldn't point at Calvin Booth and say, you're gone, and Michael Malone stays, or vice versa. Because I think he looks at both of them and saying, I left you two in charge. I left you in charge of minding the store. And when I come back, I notice that you're playing with matches. And that's not responsible. And you're fighting with each other. The difference of opinion was going to be there. And Bob Myers talked about last week on ESPN, like that dynamic between a general manager and a head coach is built to fail because one has his eyes on the day-to-day. I got to win tonight. I got to win the next game. And the other guy can take a broader view and look into the future. I mean, it started with Calvin Booth. Everyone was shocked when Calvin Booth talked about how the Spurs didn't win every year. We don't have to win every year to be a dynasty. Spurs won it every other year. People were shocked by that. But that's the mentality of a general manager. I got the next 3, 5, 10 years to think about. And this is my vision, whereas Michael Malone is in there on a day-to-day basis. So it's not that these two disagreed. It's that they couldn't get along to the detriment of the team. And that's quite the indictment on both of those grown men, is that they just couldn't find a workable relationship without bumming everyone out. Here's Josh Kroenke as far as a general manager, right? We've been talking about the types of coaches. Should it be a more veteran coach? Should it be a younger coach? Do they have to have head coaching experience? All these things. Well, what about a GM type? Is he going to hire a GM that can find hidden gems in the draft? Or is it somebody that is better at making trades? Because I'll tell you, Calvin Booth hasn't been the best at making trades. In fact, he wasn't able to make any trades when the Nuggets obviously needed a trade and the shakeup that it would provide. Maybe a trade that worked out would have saved his job, but he couldn't make one. So is it about the draft? Is it about free agency? Is it about trades? What is it in terms of a general manager's skill set?
I think we have to be open-minded towards everything, whether that's player trades, seeing value in the draft where others might not, or perhaps, finding a skill set that fits with our roster in a way that other people might not see. And so we got to be open-minded on all fronts.
That last part is really interesting to me. Finding skill sets that fit on a roster that other people may not see. I kind of feel like we've identified what types of players the Nuggets need more of. He needs more shooters. I mean, the cutting and everything, I with, Christian Brown or Russell Westbrook, like there's a place for that. But I think they have a lot of players that can do that, right? If you throw in Gordon from that dunker spot, they don't have a lot of guys that Jokic can kick it to and you trust that he's going to knock it down. So I'd be curious to see what this skill set is that maybe we're not identifying, because Josh Kroenke knows as well as anybody what we're all saying, that they need more three-point shooters. So is there some hidden skill set that we're not identifying with this Nuggets roster that they need? So I guess stay tuned for that for when we get to the offseason. But the biggest question I have moving forward about all of this, does it stop here? Because my feeling today is it doesn't, or it shouldn't. Right? The hard decision is actually not firing Michael Malone. It's giving up one of these core four players that you have, that you've invested so much in, because you know that as much as it pains you to let them go, it's the only way you're going to make yourself better. Right? I equated this to the Avalanche moves. Like Michael Malone and Calvin Booth is akin to Chris McFarland clearing out and completely replacing the goaltender room. Like nothing that he did after that would matter had he not replaced his entire goalie room. That was the necessary first step. And then it was trading Mikko. And then it was acquiring Brock Nelson. And that's how I look at it. Clearing out Michael Malone and Calvin Booth is at minimum what he needed to do. And now he gets a chance to fully evaluate this roster and decide whether his feelings about certain players are correct or not. He was asked a question about the report from Mark Stein that they didn't want to trade Michael Porter because he's also went to the Missouri, which, by the way, he was there for like 10 minutes. I don't know if you remember this. It's not like he spent 5 years. He wasn't one of these COVID turnback guys that played 6 years at an institution. The guy was there for the blink of an eye and was off to the NBA. So when I saw that was the wildest one. There's some that I believe, some that I don't. That one is nuts. And Josh Kroenke felt the exact same way about the idea that he wouldn't trade Porter because he was a Missouri grad.
Any kind of report saying that we're not open to trading everybody, possible to improve the team is a complete false. And the other thing that I'll say is, I don't know where that person got their sources from, but I'm surely not going to be greenlighting any trades around here when I don't see complete organizational cohesion and we're not maximizing the group we got.
Boom. Right there. Right at the end is what I've been talking about for the last week. The Avs goaltending analogy. Josh Kroenke doesn't even truly know what he has in this basketball team. He has some ideas. He has some notions. He has some inklings. But he doesn't truly know because of the dynamic between Booth and Malone was getting in the way of finding out what this team really is. And it speaks again to the timing of him doing it. Forget with 3 games left in the season, just doing it this season. He's got to see. We all got to see. I talked about this on Friday. I don't know that we've seen the real Denver Nuggets, whatever they're supposed to be. And maybe we see them here in this series against the Clippers and go, yeah, they're about as good as I thought they were. Maybe that's the case. But you don't truly know because of what was going on with Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. And that's what this playoff run is about. Truly evaluating what the Nuggets are, what they aren't, what they need. That's why Josh Kroenke is doing this. So we'll all find out. And I'm okay with that, right? I've said a lot about this Nuggets team over the course of 82 games. I'm in the same boat. Let's see. Let's see. Everything I think about this team, I'm willing to have my mind changed. But what I will say is that the things that don't go well this postseason, the players that don't perform, the players who aren't available, the issues that ultimately cost the Denver Nuggets, those absolutely need to be addressed immediately. And Josh Kroenke assured people today that he's going to be very hands-on. And that was another piece of this that I found very interesting. I got the sense that Josh Kroenke rubber-stamped Calvin Booth and didn't maybe go as far as he needed to make sure, is Calvin Booth really the right guy here? But I do think as well that if he were to fall into one of these two camps, the Team Malone, Team Booth, I think Josh Kroenke was more Team Booth. Maybe he overlooked some things. Maybe he didn't dig deep enough on Calvin Booth because, again, the adversarial nature of what happened between Booth. But from a basketball perspective, from his vision, I think Josh Kroenke bought into it. I think Michael Malone was the guy that didn't see eye to eye. I think Josh was very aligned with Calvin Booth. But ultimately, Calvin Booth perhaps used, and this is me completely, it's not even speculation, I'm just thinking out loud here. Could Calvin Booth have used that against Michael Malone? Well, Josh says, right, when he's arguing with Michael Malone about this, that, and the other, him saying, I know Josh has my back. Or Malone reportedly upset that they got rid of let Kentavious Caldwell-Pope go. Calvin Booth's like, Josh wanted me to. Or I know what Josh wants. Or kind of playing that. I could see that being a dynamic between the two of them. I think Josh was very much in line with what Calvin Booth had for his vision. But other stuff got in the way. And now that's gone. And the Nuggets are set to take on the Clippers. And we'll be able to really drill down into this Nuggets team, what they are and what they aren't. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the Avs, you'll be shocked to hear this. They're going to play the Stars in the first round. I know it was a wild day yesterday and things got all jumbled up, or we've known that they were going to play the Stars for like the last month. But it's now officially official. And why the biggest question mark going into this series, even though there is one with the Avs, the biggest one is on Dallas's side of the ledger. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Coming to the Pikes Peak Center on May 3rd with his night shift tour. Be a great one. He's a fast rising comic in popularity. I remember having him on the show, I think it was last year, and not a household name, and now he's making some waves. So this is a big time comedian coming into the Pikes Peak Center on May 3rd. And I want you to see what all the fuss is about when it comes to Dusty Slay. So if you text Slay to 719-247-1313, the 13th texter to do that will get a pair of tickets to see Dusty Slay on the night shift tour, Pikes Peak Center, Saturday, May 3rd. How's that sound? And good luck. I am really glad that Gabriel Landeskog played this weekend in Loveland. If I didn't know any better, I would say that this was the plan all along. A little bit of distraction. Hey, look over there. Look at Loveland. Don't look at what's going on with the Avs. Look at Landeskog. I'm glad, though, that that we had Gabriel Landeskog returning this weekend, because it was not a great watch to close out the season for the Colorado Avalanche. There were some things in these last few games that, for me, having watched it, because I say good thing we had Landeskog. I mean more for other people because I watched all of it. It's hard to unsee some of the things the Avalanche put out there. And I'll tell you what I'm most talking about. Mackenzie Blackwood has been straight up bad the last 4 games of the season. Now, yes, he's had Nathan McKinnon, didn't have Cale Makar. Like, I get it. But we did this before with the last guy where we say, oh, it will be okay. Like when this guy's in the lineup and this guy's in the lineup, and then what happened? Okay, so I don't want to go all the way down that road yet. But Mackenzie Blackwood was one of my biggest question marks surrounding this team. Not that I haven't liked the vast majority of his time in Colorado, but this is a guy that has never stepped onto the stage he's about to step onto. And he's across the ice from a guy that has put together numerous big-time series-clinching, series-saving performances in Jake Ottinger. One of my biggest questions was about Mackenzie Blackwood, so it would be nice if Mackenzie Blackwood would finish the season on a higher note than he did. It was rough. A GAA of nearly 4. About 4 goals a night he was giving up over his last 4 starts. If Nathan McKinnon were not scoring goals, or if Cale Makar wasn't playing very well, I would go, yeah, I would kind of write that off a little bit. But with Mackenzie Blackwood, I can't just brush it away. Because what has Mackenzie Blackwood done to give him that benefit of the doubt, other than playing very well for the Colorado Avalanche this season? He hasn't even been here a full season. There's an entire rest of Mackenzie Blackwood's career. And I'm not saying that Mackenzie Blackwood isn't any good or anything like that, but it's just not the player that I think you wanted to see stumble across the finish line. Because the one thing that I can say for the Dallas Stars going into this series, they do have the goaltending advantage. Now, how big of a goaltending advantage is going to be the question. I'll take Jake Ottinger. I don't care how McKenzie. I'll take Jake Ottinger 7 days a week. Okay, and that's more about who Ottinger is than it is about who Mackenzie Blackwood is. It's not putting Blackwood down. It's giving Jake Ottinger his flowers. But how big of a discrepancy there is between the two goaltenders will go a long way to deciding whether the Avs can make up that difference. And the Mackenzie Blackwood I saw over the last 4 games of the season, that would be a big discrepancy in goal. So I'm looking at it going into game 1, whether that's Saturday or Sunday. I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm not proclaiming he will be the downfall of the Colorado Avalanche, but if I had to guess what ultimately is the downfall of the Avs, we'll probably say that it was goaltending or Valeri Nichushkin disappearing. Because kind of that's what it's been. That's been the Avs story in the playoffs the last couple of years. It's hard for me to envision that if the Avs bow out of these playoffs fairly early on, let's say in round 1, that I'm not sitting here on this microphone saying the Dallas Stars having the much better goaltender was a big reason why. So I'm keeping an eye on it. It's one of the biggest storylines going into this series for sure. But Mackenzie Blackwood has done a lot of good with the Avs, and considering the players that were not available, perhaps I wouldn't be hitting the panic button. But it was tough to unsee. It was tough to unsee. One thing that I do think was a testament to the Avs the last couple of games, I thought the fight from this team was awesome. They had to battle back in both of these games late in the season, and with a severely limited roster, they battled. And I get it. It's the Ducks in one game. The Kings is a little bit of a better indication, I suppose. The Kings are a much better team than the Ducks are. But there's a lot of guys that are going to be on lines that you just want to play hard. Don't need a lot of goals out of the third and fourth line. You don't need a lot of goals out of Sam Malinsky. So I'll say that on the Avalanche's behalf, I love the fight that this team showed. And when you're talking about a bunch of grit guys, a bunch of third and fourth liners, you take that. And that is a positive sign going in to the playoffs. I think, talking about Sam Malinsky, I think he's got to be in the lineup every night during the postseason, no? I think he's earned that. I think the decision is now, do you go Eric Johnson or Ryan Lindgren? Because if everybody is healthy, you're going Taves, Makar. I think you put Manson and Girard back together. And then you got 3 guys for 2 spots, Malinsky, EJ, and Lindgren. I think one of those guys has to be Sam Malinsky. That has to be part of Jared Bednar's thinking here. Right? I'm going to give these guys a chance, and they can earn something from me over these last few games. I think Sam Malinsky has earned a game 1 start. And then whether it be Ryan Lindgren or Eric Johnson is up to Jared Bednar. I would probably go Lindgren. And then you have Eric Johnson if you need him. But we'll see what Jared Bednar does with that third pairing. But it's the third pairing, right? You want effort. You want energy. You want that grit and sandpaper. And I thought that the Avs, the last couple of games of the season, really showed that. So that was a good thing. The biggest question mark, though, going into the series is not on the Avs side. They have their questions. Miro Heiskanen could, and I guess this is my oversimplification day. I started the show by talking about let's not throw all this other stuff about the Nuggets into the mix. Let's just talk about Jamal Murray. And it all starts with him, and everything matters a little bit less depending on what kind of form Jamal Murray is in. I'll apply the same logic to the Stars Avs series. You know, Miro Heiskanen, he wasn't going to play. Then he was. Then he'd be back before the playoffs. Now it's not for the playoffs. And then it was going to be game one. Well, now it's not game one, but it's at some point. If Miro Heiskanen doesn't hit the ice until game 5 or 6, this series could be over by then. They need him now. I say they need Miro Heiskanen no later than game 3. No later than game 3. That is a huge piece of the puzzle here. And it's a series that on paper, they're evenly matched. No team has a decided advantage over the other. There are certain aspects. Again, the goaltending leans Dallas, best player. Actually, I'll say the two best players in this series are both wearing Avs sweaters. But it's pretty even. And Vegas, I think, put out Stars are minus 105 to win the series. Avs are minus 115. That's basically both of these teams are really good. They're evenly matched. We're going to lean slightly into the Avs. And I think Miro Heiskanen is the reason why. If they don't have him, forget the discrepancy between Jake Ottinger and Mackenzie Blackwood. The Avs can attack Jake Ottinger a lot easier without Heiskanen in the lineup. You saw that a few weeks ago when the Avs played Dallas. They are much easier to play against when they don't have Miro Heiskanen on the blue line. So we could get into goaltending, we can get into power plays, we can get into penalty kills and all that kind of stuff, and we will over the course of the next few days. But you ask me where I think this series is going to go, tell me when the Dallas is getting Miro Heiskanen. I think the Stars are playing some games here. And my guess is he's back sooner rather than later. But if he, for whatever reason, isn't, the Stars could be toast by the time he gets back out on the ice. They need him. They need him as much as the Nuggets need Jamal Murray. So that will be the development through the week. When is he actually going to play? Game 2 or 3? I think the Stars could be just fine. Game 5, 6? Ooh. If I was a Stars fan, that would make me very nervous. Oh, and Mikko Rantanen plays for the Stars. Don't know. I'm obligated to mention that, Mikko Rantanen, he's with Dallas now. Just because I know you're not going to hear at all throughout the week that Mikko Rantanen is on the Stars and used to play for the Avs. It's not going to be the biggest thing that everyone talks about surrounding this series, certainly. So I just wanted to refresh your memory that's where whatever happened to that Mikko Rantanen guy, yeah, he's in Dallas. Yeah, you may have seen a tweet about it somewhere. 719-247-1313. Your early thoughts on Avs Stars or Nuggets Clippers. And coming up next, why every single one of these teams in the West is a team that only a fan can love. Speaking of Matt Mahoney and the Colorado Springs Switchbacks, they are back at Widener Field this Saturday, and they will be hosting El Paso Locomotive. Gates open at 5. A New Jersey will be revealed. Not New Jersey, that has already been revealed. We know where New Jersey is. We've seen it. A New Jersey for the Switchbacks will be revealed on that game. Get your tickets now. SwitchbacksFC.com. Congratulations to Lance, who won the pair of tickets to see Dusty Slay May 3rd at the Pikes Peak Center. If you're like, oh, I joined late, I missed my opportunity, or I entered and I was not the 13th texter, do not worry, because I have chances the rest of the week for you to win. I'm thinking about this field we have in the NBA playoffs on the Western Conference side. Like, I don't care about the East until we get to Cleveland, Boston. Wake me up when that happens. I don't care about anything else. Orlando, Atlanta tomorrow, hard pass. The West, I think, is very intriguing. And it's not just because the Nuggets are in it, but I think you look at these collection of teams, and yeah, we'll have a couple of teams that don't really deserve to be in lopped off here in the next couple of days, and then we'll be. But the 8 we're going to end up with, or at least the 8 I think we're going to end up with, they're all flawed. You notice this? Like the days of KD's Warriors, the Heatles, LeBron's Cavs team when it was him and Kyrie. Like, by design, those teams are dead now. And every team is having to scratch and claw and figure out a way to stay at the top of the NBA. And that's why we've seen the rotating champions. There's no great team. There's no team that you look at on the West and say, oh, they could. Oh, no doubt. Every single one of these teams, because of Adam Silver's NBA, are very flawed. Nuggets, right, chief among them. But OKC has little depth, especially when it comes to Shea and then who. Right? As a team, as a collective, they're amazing. But this is, especially in the playoffs, built on duos. Who's OKC's duo? You thought it was going to be Chet, but he's been, in and out, and he's a terrific player, and so is Jalen Williams. But OKC has a flaw, pretty noticeable one. Houston, no experience. They are a handsy bunch, though, aren't they? Did you watch that Nuggets game yesterday? My goodness. You cannot do anything without a Rockets player all over you. And I mean that in kind of an endearing way. Like, Ime Udoka has got this team. They battle. I like Houston. But they have no experience. No go-to scorer. Game on the line, who they turn to. Lakers have no front court. Right? The Clippers team that the Nuggets are going to see, they showed up 10 minutes ago. Hey, you been following the Clippers? Of course not. You know why? Because it's been just James Harden chucking it up for 65 games, and then all of a sudden Kawhi shows up. Everyone had tuned out, and I watched that game yesterday, and I'm like, Clippers look really good. But they just showed up 10 minutes ago. It's not the team they've been all season. So how much can you really buy in to this LA Clippers team? They look really good, but they look really good for about 10 games. because that's when they got Kawhi back. Wolves, we know the deal with them. Defensively, you don't want to play these guys. Offensively, outside of Anthony Edwards, who else? Kind of the same deal with the Warriors. They are very Steph Curry reliant. And the Nuggets could probably fit some of the bill with all of these teams. We haven't seen the Nuggets starting five together that often. They are very reliant on their best player. Defense can be an issue. Like, all of these teams are very flawed. And to me, not just the Clippers-Nuggets series, but these Western Conference playoffs in their entirety, it's going to be about matchups more than anything, right? If Adam Silver is trying to create the parity that the NFL does, what we always talk about in the NFL, matchups. Right? This team's a really good running team. This team is not good at stopping the run. This team gets to the quarterback. This team doesn't. This team has a mobile quarterback. This one does. Like, in these Western Conference playoffs, in the East, it's just Boston and Cleveland are much better than everyone else. But in the West, it's really, that's why yesterday was so fascinating. And I'll give Adam Silver some level of credit. I hate the play-in. I absolutely abhor it. But I'll tell you this, he got the desired result. The basketball this weekend was awesome. That Warriors-Clippers game yesterday was about as good of an NBA game as I have watched all year. That had all the emotion and all the swings and everything of a playoff matchup. That was an electric game. But that's because of play-in. That's why nobody wants to go to the play-in. So credit to Adam Silver. He has created this thing that teams will avoid like the plague. It's a shame that it has to come to this. Right? In an ideal world, these teams are all very self-motivated and are all about putting their best effort forward every single night. It's a shame that this manufactured thing has to be what spurs this on, but got its desired result this weekend. Basketball, the NBA was interesting. Games were good. Big players stepped up. And we're interested in these matchups. And we're interested in these matchups because if you go against a team that has the wrong thing, like Lakers can talk about Luka and LeBron all they want, Nikola Jokic would destroy them. I don't care what JJ Redick did in that. Like, this is playoff Nikola Jokic. This is different. Golden State the same way. That's why I said Golden State would have been a better matchup for the Denver Nuggets than this Clippers team is. You face an opponent that has that one thing that attacks your weakness. That's what's going to decide this series, and that's why we may see some upsets. Just right out of the box, I'm not predicting this, but could you see a team like Golden State beating Houston? Yeah. Can you see the Wolves beating the Lakers? Yes. Can you see the Clippers beating the Nuggets? Absolutely. OKC is the only higher seed that I look at and say they're pretty safe for round one. But they're vulnerable going forward. I think the West could be really good. And it's because all of these teams have pretty noticeable flaws. And if they're going against a team that has something that can exploit that, that's what ultimately will decide it. We'll get into the Nuggets' weaknesses and the Clippers' weaknesses and see if one another can exploit them coming up next hour. In the meantime, I want to talk to you about Low T Center. We all know that hitting that 40-year-old mark, right? As Mike Gundy would say, you're a man when you're 40. But that also means that you have some things come about that you didn't potentially have a problem with before you turned 40. Maybe you're struggling with low energy. Maybe you're just not really feeling yourself and like, this is weird. Well, maybe time to get your testosterone levels checked at Low T Center. And if your levels are low, Low T Center's testosterone replacement therapy is the solution. They got conveniently located clinics all over the place. You can meet a medical provider, get back to feeling your best. That's what they want to do at Low T Center. And this April only, how about this? Consultation, free. Treatment is tailor-made just for you, and it's covered by most major insurance. Get treated at our centers or from home. Why wait to get back to your best? Do it now. Book your appointment now at lowtcenter.com. That's lowtcenter.com. Hello there. Welcome in. Monday edition of the show. Ryan with you. Kaufman, if we're going to be formal about it. Appreciate you tuning in, whether you're listening to the show on air, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, or whether you are doing a combination of watching and listening on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300. I do very much appreciate your patronage. 719-24-7. 1313 is the number if you want to call or text in and give your thoughts on this Monday. And maybe you want to give some thoughts on these stories that we call the ones that are driving the show. All right, we start with the governor of the Denver Nuggets for story number one.
Neither of them deserved it, and so for that I apologize. For my position, as a leader of the organization, I needed to be better at different points in time. I could see certain trends behind the scenes with the group, and those were worrisome. But when you have an incredibly talented roster that we have, an incredibly solid group across the board of people, you're able to play through some of that. And so ultimately, I made the decision that I did last week with the hope of kind of rejuvenating the energy of the group and reestablishing some positive thoughts before the playoffs.
Josh Kroenke earlier today meeting with the media, further explaining his decision to fire Michael Malone. Now, they didn't deserve it there at the top. I don't know what he's referring to there, because I think it's pretty well accepted by everyone that both of these guys, not that you relish in anybody getting fired, but it sure seems like there was some stuff going on that both of them needed to find a different employer. But I think that's Josh Kroenke taking some responsibility, and I think that that's not wrong of him to do. And he talked about today him needing to be hands-on in transitional stages of this franchise. And you remember he was front and center when they went from Carl to Shaw, and from Shaw to ultimately Michael Malone. Josh Kroenke was very visible. And then if you notice, when Tim Connolly left, it was just kind of, here's Calvin Booth. Not to say that we didn't see Josh Kroenke, but it just felt like this was, well, we'll just do this. Tim Connolly had him as the assistant. We'll promote from within. It felt very assembly line or rubber stamp. Like Josh was like, I'm good. I don't need to go really in the weeds here to figure out if Calvin Booth is the right guy to take over for Tim Connolly. And I think you heard, at least I heard, I don't know if you actually heard all of Josh Kroenke's press conference today. I think I heard some regret in his voice that maybe he didn't put as much attention into Tim Connolly to Calvin Booth as he had going to Tim Connolly when he first hired him, or going from George Karl to Brian Shaw and Brian Shaw to Michael Malone. Rest assured, he's going to be very visible from here on out. And he said it himself. He needs to be more hands-on during times of transition, which this obviously is one of the bigger transitional phases of the Nuggets franchise. But the other part of this, that line you just heard, was the early results. And I think that is a significant development. I think you have seen the coaching change bring forth the desired results. I think this team has played very well over the course of 3 games. There's been a lot good about it. They were in danger of still losing against the Grizzlies, but I thought they played well in all 3 of David Adelman's games. But I like the way that David Adelman's going about it. He's very much putting it on the players. Lead yourselves, communicate. He stepped in every once in a while. I see him coaching up some guys, but I also see DeAndre Jordan with his arm around David Adelman clearly giving him his thoughts on the situation. I don't know that you see things like that in the Michael Malone era. And a lot of it is out of necessity, right? David Adelman doesn't have it figured out to the level that Michael Malone does. This is not turning into, a kick Michael Malone on the way out. But this is speaking to all the players kind of having more of an ownership stake because they know that probably David Adelman isn't ready to truly take the reins at this point. They need to help him. And you've heard multiple players on the Nuggets mention fun, mention some of the team dynamics being different. I think to Josh Kroenke's credit, it doesn't mean it's going to translate to the postseason, but for these 3 games, he got the desired result. I see it. But this is all very much a cautionary tale, right? Because they did this with Booth. Because of whatever Calvin Booth was doing behind the scenes and whatever Tim Connolly felt about Calvin Booth to bring him into the organization, that was good enough for Josh Kroenke. Just because David Adelman has this stamp of approval from Michael Malone because he brought him in, just because things look pretty good right now with David Adelman doesn't mean that Josh Kroenke doesn't need to do an exhaustive search to see if there's a better option. David Adelman has not won this job by a long shot. And there are levels that Adelman can get to that he would get closer to getting that job. But a mini 3-game winning streak here at the end of the year isn't that. So Josh Kroenke can't fall too in love with David Adelman just yet. In the playoffs is when that tends to happen. Here's story number 2.
Left wing half wall to the blue line for Rosen. Back for Tynan. Upstairs. Rosen, one-timer. Scores! Gabe Landeskog! And there's your punctuation on a comeback weekend for the captain.
AHL TV on the call. Gabriel Landeskog, what a weekend. What a return. Friday night with all the hoopla, 120,000 plus people tuning in on YouTube to watch Gabriel Landeskog step back out on the ice. And between Friday and Saturday, you got everything. You saw Gabe skate. You saw him mix it up. You saw a dude put a dude into a headlock. Saw him passing. Saw him scoring a goal. I don't know. I have too much of an untrained eye to really fully diagnose Gabriel Landeskog, but I watch a lot of hockey. He looked like the best player on the ice. He looked like he was at a level that these other guys weren't. And I think that's what you want to see, right? In a guy making a rehab start, you know he's going to ultimately be back with the big club. Look like this place is not your ultimate destination. I didn't think Gabriel Landeskog struggled at all with that level of play, the speed of the game. It's a whole different ball of wax, obviously, when he gets back on the ice for the Avs. But again, we're still in the clearing hurdles portion to get to Gabriel Landeskog returning ultimately for the Colorado Avalanche. And I thought this weekend was cleared that hurdle and then some. And the 120K tuning in to watch that, slightly above the numbers that my show does on social media. It tells you that this is bigger than just here. You know, we get in our bubble and we care about a lot of stuff like Gabriel Landeskog's return to the ice. And you wonder, like, does the rest of the hockey world care as much as we do? I think the numbers will tell you that yes. I think that you could argue that post Ovechkin breaking the goal scoring record, this has become the biggest story in the NHL. And everyone is pulling for this guy to be back out on the ice. Some have higher expectations for him once he is than others, but everybody's pulling for the guy. How could you not? Given that he's dedicated his life when he could have walked away as a millionaire, right? He doesn't need the money. He's got his Stanley Cup. This guy's battling back because he loves it. And how could you not root for a guy like that? So I don't know what else needs to be done between now and this weekend for Gabriel Landeskog to be deemed ready. He looks as ready as he can be to me. We'll see what Jared Bednar says throughout the week leading up to their series against the Stars. I suppose I should add in here, just in case you haven't seen, that playoff matchups for both the Avs and the Nuggets are set. Nuggets, as the 4 seed, will play the Clippers, the 5 seed, Avs, and Stars. We've known about this for a long time, but it's now officially official. And Game 1 will be in Dallas Saturday or Sunday. Game 1 for the Nuggets and Clippers at Ball Arena Saturday afternoon. Hallelujah. Love Game 1 in the afternoon. 1:30 in the Mountain Time Zone. And you can hear it right here on Extra Sports 1300. Quick plug in there. Speaking of great sports stories from the weekend, this was a good sports weekend. Here's story number 3.
Right back and through, and he's made it! He's done it! It's a grand slam roar at Augusta National. Rory McIlroy on his knees, bent down in emotion, clutching his head. He's won the Masters. He's won all the Grand Slam events. He's the 6th in the history of the game to enter golf's greatest group.
Mike Tirico on the call for Sirius XM. That was a wild ride yesterday. That was the Mr. Toad's wild ride of golf tournaments, or just rounds of golf tournaments. As Rory McIlroy finally completes the career Grand Slam. Took him a minute, but he got it done. And what I found so enthralling about yesterday was how it was so much more about Rory against himself than it was him against anybody. Bryson fell off pretty early. And that golf course was not bending to Bryson DeChambeau's will. He was not coming back to make this interesting. And, you know, Justin Rose was in a different group. Victor Oberg was in or Ludwig Oberg. I think I want to call him Victor Hovland because I see some similarities as like the guy that you're just so sure is going to win the next major. But at any rate, Ludwig Oberg, they were in a different group. Right? We went into Sunday thinking it was going to be, all right, here we go, Bryson versus Rory. And about 6 holes in, you're like, well, 1 hole in, you're like, oh, it's just Bryson. And then 5 holes later is like, oh, it's just Rory. But it was Rory against himself in the way that that round played out, where it just seemed like all of his old demons at that golf course came back to visit him throughout that round. You know, he was the only, what they say, the only Masters champion to have 4 double bogeys in a week. Like, we saw bad Rory and great Rory and everything in between through 18 holes. It was fascinating. And once Rory, and even down to the last minute, you thought I had gone up. I was ready to go eat dinner with my kids. I was like, he's making this 6-foot putt on 18 ball game. Like I wanted to see it, but I'm like, this is over. Nope. We go to a playoff. Like even at the last minute, Rory couldn't close this thing out the way he wanted to, but ultimately he gets it done. And you heard Mike Tirico describe it there. I mean, you don't have to admit it to me, but just know this is a safe space, and I'll just be the brave one to step forward. Got a little misty. When we see these guys for their entire career, and we know what Rory has been through, it's been pretty well publicized. It didn't sneak up on us that Rory had failed 10 times to win the Masters and complete the career Grand Slam. Like we've been living this with Rory McIlroy this whole time. And the emotion that he showed, like just that reaction. And then when he goes over to his wife there and just, man, a lot of why we watch sports is to complain. That was awesome. Nothing to complain about. That was an amazing ride on Sunday. And I felt emotion. And Rory's never been one of my favorite golfers at all. Like, I would not say that he's would qualify as that at all, but, and not that I dislike him, but I mean, just the investment into him and following this ride. I don't know how you couldn't be a little bit like, a little bit choked up. But that's why we love sports, because once in a while, it'll make us emotionless brutes show that we do have a softer side. That was cool. The best thing, I know the Landeskog part of it, the Nuggets playing well, all that. Rory was the best part of the weekend. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, 82 games in the books. The regular season is over. What we just saw from Nikola Jokic. Next. Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC back at Widener Field this Saturday, taking on El Paso Locomotive. If you'd like to go, got a pair of tickets for the 13th texter to text Switchbacks and their name to 719-247-1313. I know how this is going to end. It's going to end with exactly what David Adelman talked about this weekend. This is going to end with the greatest statistical season in the history of the league to not win an MVP. I know I've seen some people coming out of the woodwork over the last few days saying that Bill Simmons is one. Ryan Russillo says he's voting Jokic. I've seen some people talk about voting for Nikola Jokic. I think this is going to go to SGA. And it will be one of the great shocks of my recent sports memory if Nikola Jokic wins this MVP. Which, can I just take a minute to say how insane that sounds? That at this point, I would be shocked if a guy who averaged a 30-point triple-double, 30 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists, would win MVP. That's what sounds crazy. That I'd be shocked if that guy won, but that's exactly where we are. And I was digging into this because there is historical precedent for awarding players that average a triple-double for a season, right? Oscar Robertson did it, won MVP. First time Russell Westbrook did it, he won MVP. And I remember when Russell Westbrook won it, I didn't remember when Oscar Robertson won it, but when Russell Westbrook won it, the argument was, of course he's going to get it. He averaged a freaking triple-double. That was the conversation. And yet this one doesn't apply. But you also have to look back and realize that Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double more than that one time, and he didn't win it. And I look at when James Harden won it. That's the year, 2018. Go ahead if you feel compelled or if you got some time to kill tonight. Look into that. Remember that MVP race. That's exactly what's playing out now. James Harden was, I will say this over Shea, was a better distributor of the basketball. But it was largely for two reasons. One, James Harden was putting up ridiculous scoring numbers, as Shea is right now. And that Rockets team, compared to Russell Westbrook's Thunder team, was about the same distance between the Thunder and the Nuggets. So the premise was Harden is putting up ridiculous scoring numbers, and his team is so good. But what is also in the mix there is that Russell Westbrook did this before. Nikola Jokic, as great as he's been, has never done this before. This is his first season averaging a triple-double. And he's not going to be rewarded for that. And not just triple-double, because there was another year where Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double. He lost to Giannis. Giannis had better numbers than Westbrook in two of the three categories for a triple-double, right? Points, rebounds, assists. Giannis had better scoring numbers and better rebounding numbers than Russ did. It was the assist numbers that weren't there. James Harden only beat out Russell Westbrook in scoring. But we don't have that. Right? Shea only beat Jokic in scoring. But I understand that there is historical precedence for a player that has averaged a triple-double for a season to not win MVP. And the circumstances around James Harden beating out Russell Westbrook are very similar to this. Even though Nikola Jokic has never done this before, average a triple-double for the season, let alone a 30 freaking point triple-double, there is a feeling of we've seen this before, even though we haven't. Even though we haven't, there's a feeling of we've seen this before. We've seen Jokic be brilliant. It's almost like, well, he almost had a triple-double most every year for the season. It's like, but he hasn't. But yeah, he hasn't though. And you've done it in the past where these players who have earned triple-doubles for the season have gotten MVP. And you said that anybody voting against that is stupid. Times change, I suppose. But the 2018 MVP race is exactly what this is. This is a player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that has put up stupid numbers when it comes to scoring. He's been so good scoring the basketball this year, and that cannot be denied. And I don't want to get into the free throw stuff. Okay? But I will say this. Again, as we separate regular season, postseason, right? Let's not do the thing that people did to Nikola Jokic a couple years ago and go, well, he hasn't won an NBA Finals yet. So how can he win MVP? Because it's a regular season award, Nick, right? When we cut off the regular season and go to the postseason, recall what happened in 2018 to James Harden. Because James Harden was very much the same player when he went into the postseason. And what happened? Despite having a phenomenal regular season, the Rockets being much better than most everybody in the West, certainly much better than Russell Westbrook's Thunder team was, James Harden didn't get the whistle. Didn't get the whistle that he was accustomed to. And what happened to that Rockets team? So the history could repeat itself in that way. But that's not this conversation. What Shai does in the playoffs has nothing to do with whether he deserves MVP. I'm just looking forward and saying we could see a little bit of that with Shai in these playoffs. But as far as just deserving the MVP, I feel like we're not all talking to each other at the same level. I feel like some of us are bringing standards to the table that have been largely agreed upon, and now they're not agreed upon anymore. And I suppose when you're talking about subjectivity, that has to be part of it. That sometimes bars are raised or lowered, or different things mean more or different things mean less. I suppose that's part of it, but it feels like we're not arguing on the same level here. Shai's put up ridiculous scoring numbers. Yeah, but Jokic is averaging a 30-point triple-double. Oh, well, Shai's valuable, the most valuable player on a team that's much better. Yeah, but Nikola Jokic carried his team to a top 4 seed, and the room was so toxic that it was eating away at this team, and yet Nikola Jokic still did what he did, and the Nuggets still ended up where they ended up. I'm not going to go so far as to say that this is Josh Kroenke's elaborate scheme to get Nikola Jokic the MVP by exposing how toxic the Denver Nuggets have been, and yet Nikola Jokic rises above it all and puts up one of the best statistical seasons we have ever seen. But isn't that a part of the conversation now? Doesn't it have to be? The one thing about history repeating itself that I do hope happens, if somebody is voting for Shea, stand on it. Okay, what bothered me more than anything when Joel Embiid won was not the fact that Joel Embiid won. It wasn't. Check the tape. Yes, Nikola Jokic was my pick, but I said Joel Embiid absolutely has an MVP case. And I could see how it would go either way. What bothered me was that immediately at the first opportunity, once the season started, a lot of these people came out of the woodworking and went, why did I vote for Joel Embiid? Why did I do this? I should have just given it to Nikola Jokic because he deserved it. That's what I hope more than anything else doesn't happen here. Okay? If you're voting for SGA because you're like, the Thunder are so much better than everyone else, and Shea put up ridiculous scoring numbers. And a third thing that I can't quite think of when it comes to Shea's candidacy, but if it's those two, then fine, then stand on it. Don't come back in November because, I don't know, the OKC got upset in the first round, or Shea didn't look as good when he wasn't getting a regular season whistle, or Nikola Jokic went on to roast the entire NBA in the playoffs. And you said whatever standard you were holding him to because he had never won an NBA Finals, now you're kicking yourself because that should have never been. Whatever the reason is, if you're voting SGA, vote and stand by it. Because it's so much worse when we heard the season after Joel Embiid won, when we said that Nikola Jokic was our pick or Nikola Jokic deserved it, and they go, yeah, we kind of messed up, guys. Sorry. That's the worst thing that could happen. If you believe SGA is the MVP, Godspeed, vote for him. It's not like he doesn't have an MVP case. And I'll say the same thing today that I said when Joel Embiid won. I don't think it's a better case than Nikola Jokic, but it's a case. You're not giving it to LeBron, so we're good. You vote SGA, I respectfully disagree with you and feel I have many more reasons for why Nikola Jokic should be the MVP than you have that SGA should be. But if you believe strongly that SGA is, and this isn't about voter fatigue, and this is not about wanting somebody different or whose turn it is, and you truly believe that the couple of reasons to vote for Shea trumps the more reasons to vote for Jokic, go right ahead. And stand firm if Nikola Jokic puts on a run like he had 2 years ago. Right? If Nikola Jokic does what he did 2 years ago, which is not completely out of the realm of possibility, then still say regular season award, because you know what? You'd be right. But that was the worst thing about 2 years ago. Is that we said, this feels like voter fatigue. This feels like a couple of reasons are being put above many reasons for why Nikola Jokic should win. And then what happened? Following season, a lot of people went, shouldn't vote for Joel Embiid. Should have been Jokic. But let's not, this season doesn't have to end in an MVP. I mean, it does because it should, but it doesn't have to recognize just how unbelievable this guy was. And if we could spin this forward going into the postseason, he might have to be a combination of what he's been for this season plus what he was 2 years ago in order for the Nuggets to make it out of the West this year. They may need all of Nikola Jokic, what he's been this season, and then some. But that's exactly what they might get. 719-24-7, 1313. Coming up next, a few odds and ends that I had not gotten to. Your thoughts as well on this Monday. Obviously, Stars, Avs, and Nuggets, Clippers will be the prevailing topics throughout the week. But if you have some thoughts today that you want to share before we're done at the top of the hour, feel free to fire away at 719-24-7, 1313. News out of Boulder. I don't know how to take this one. So Travis Hunter and Shador are getting their jerseys retired. Does that strike anybody else as a bit odd? It's a little bit odd to me. Like, look, they were integral pieces to a turnaround for an irrelevant program that gained national prominence. They didn't even play for their conference's championship. They each played 2 years. Like, this feels a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction. And this feels a little bit like Dad has something to say about all this. I don't know. Like, to me, if we held the same standards of jersey retirement in college as we do the pros, we probably would not retire very many jerseys. But at the same time, do we need to? Like, again, there are levels to this, right? I always talk about this. Like, just because you're in, like, the Broncos Ring of Fame doesn't mean you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. There's some overlap, but you know, there's a place where you can recognize a player that has had great value to you that maybe outside of it, people are like, really? Like, maybe. I mean, people have their jerseys retired that have won national championships. But this, so I'll just say, I don't get it. I don't get it. And the bar feels kind of low now for jersey retirement in Boulder. And I, you know, I'm as big of a Shador and Travis Hunter fan as they are. I've been defending Shador Sanders for 3 months now against people that don't think he's going to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. But I mean, this is like the highest honor that you can bestow upon somebody. And even played 2 years, and yeah, I don't get this. But look, jersey retirement, mascots, team names, Ring of Fames, those are all for the fans, the hardcore fans. So I'll relent here, and if you're a Buffs fan and you think that they're deserving, it's for you. I mean, it's for them, but it's for you. If you're okay with it, then. But from the outside looking in, kind of the outside, I suppose. I'm in the state, but interesting. But Shador and Travis are going to get their numbers retired at the spring game. I just hope that this isn't a reaction to the Syracuse thing falling through, so they know they have to do something. We can't book Lil Wayne to come out and perform, so we're going to do this. I hope it's not that. The cynical side of me, that was the cynical side of me speaking up just now. I hope it's not that. I hope there's some still some sacred institutions in sports. And the powers that be feel very strongly that because of what they meant to this program, that and I should separate them, right? I should. It's probably not fair to lump them in together. Travis won a Heisman in addition to everything else. So they're at different levels here. Like Travis, okay. Like I can, again, wasn't there that long, not a ton of team success. Still don't know that I'm fully there with the idea that Travis Hunter's getting his jersey retired, but he has more of a case than Shedeur does. I hope once again the cynical side of me is wrong. But they'll do that at the spring game. Albert says best part of his weekend was Western Michigan destroying DU and Boston. Yeah, good for Western Michigan. You know, it's amazing what happens when you invest in a program. Like, and I'm not even being sarcastic or facetious like everyone thinks I am at all hours of the day, anytime I speak. Like, I legitimately mean it. What did Western Michigan do? Invested in their program. Big time. Yielded results. Money doesn't buy happiness. Money can buy a lot of stuff that will make you very happy. Congrats to the Broncos. Jersey J says Jokic should be winning his 5th MVP. Now, I will say, to be fair, don't have time to get into it. His 2nd MVP, just look at that. Look at his 2nd MVP. We got to be fair here. Got to be fair. Look at his 2nd MVP. Not as strong of a case. I'll at least say this. The case that was made for him to win his 2nd MVP, not as strong as the case for him to win MVP this year. Right? But he's going to finish in the top 2 of MVP voting for 5 straight years. There's 2 other players in the history of basketball that have done that. In our neck of the woods, we don't necessarily need him to win the MVP in order to recognize what we have just witnessed. And hey, if you're, about the universe and in signs and history repeating itself and all that good stuff, when was the last time Nikola Jokic didn't win an MVP? What did he proceed to do? What's that about? Where's I don't have the drop in. I gotta get the drop back. The whole thing about beast and vulnerable and being awakened. I know he doesn't care about the MVP. But whatever. There was something that happened 2 years ago, and the only I can only draw a couple of comparisons. One, Jamal Murray was healthy. Started the show with that. And then second, he didn't win the MVP that year. So if any part of Nikola Jokic cares at all about winning the MVP and he's slided by it, Nuggets are better for it because they need the Nikola Jokic of 2 years ago if they're going to make it through this Western Conference with this roster. We'll get more into that as the week goes along. Again, game 1 for the Nuggets and Clippers announced 1:30 on Saturday, and you can hear it right here on Extra Sports 1300. Avs Stars are TBD because some NHL teams are still playing their regular season, even though most everything is decided already. So we'll wait to find out, and then we got to find out what the rest of the Nuggets-Clippers series looks like. But definitely Saturday, 1:30. Make your plans. Speaking of making plans, how about making a plan to get back to your best? Arguably as important as making plans to watch the Nuggets this weekend. If you're a man over 40 and you're struggling with low energy or just not really feeling yourself, Low T Center's testosterone replacement therapy is the solution. Get started today. It's easy. You can visit one of their conveniently located clinics, meet with a medical provider, and get back to feeling your best. In this April only, how about this? Consultation, free. Treatment, tailor-made just for you. And covered by most major insurance. So get treated at their centers or from home. How about that? Even better. Don't wait. Book your appointment now at lowtcenter.com. That's lowtcenter.com. It has been my pleasure to serve you. Be back tomorrow afternoon, same bat time, same bat channel. I don't know what you're going to watch. Novocaine. I watched the movie Novocaine. That was good. So if you want a recommendation, we're just kind of waiting for the weekend, aren't we? Talk to you tomorrow.